A lot of people are interested in monthly dividends for the express reason that they can earn monthly income as opposed to quarterly income. So let's take a look at what type of investments pay monthly dividends. In essence, there are three main ones. They're ETFs, mutual funds, and some stocks. Of course, ETFs and mutual funds have the most options in terms of monthly dividend payers, but there are actually 40 stocks that do pay monthly dividends. So, which ETFs pay monthly dividends? And there's actually quite a few. By what I was able to find, 246, and I found that information on ETF Database website. So I didn't list it on my post. It was just easier to link to it. No point in duplicating that information. And if you follow the link on the post there, it will take you here. Now keep in mind that this is a little bit of an older post. If you can see the date there, it was written in May of 2014, updated in June 2014, but about 5 years old as of now. Anyways, it's a good starting point. Like I said, has a good selection of ETFs, and they're grouped by asset class. So, you got all your bonds there, which the bond ETFs make up, if I remember right, 206 of 246. You've got a fair share of equity ETFs, actually a couple commodity ETFs, which surprised me, and then everything else is grouped under other, which comprises real estate ETFs and preferred stock. So if you're interested in any of those, you can see that they have the link, the name and the ticker, and you can do your research a little bit there on ETF Database or any other site, whatever your preferred site is to do fund research at. And like I said, just keep in mind that page is a little bit older, so it might not be completely comprehensive. There could be some funds that have started since then and aren't included, but again, it gives you a pretty good selection. So we'll look next at stocks that pay monthly dividends. Okay. And there are a decent amount of options available, and not nearly as many as with ETFs or mutual funds, like I said. But I also linked to another site here, deferred to a site that focuses more on dividends. And that link, of course, is in the post also. And this list is updated for 2019, so like I said, it's a site dedicated to dividends, and from what I saw when I looked, it tends to update this list every year, so a great reference. And it's actually been updated since I wrote the post, because this used to say 41, and I make the note in my post that it says 41, but I only counted 40, and apparently that number has gone down one from even when I counted, so I'll have to update my post there. Anyhow, let me get past the pop-up here. He puts this information into a kind of spreadsheet of sorts here for you, with some basic information in terms of price, dividend yield, which you're probably definitely interested in, market cap, P ratio, and payout ratio. I'm guessing, let me see if I'm right here, that I bet I know which stock they dropped off. The one thing that this site didn't do that I was curious about, so I took it upon myself to look up, was which stocks are in what sector. Because I wrote on a previous post about what makes for a high quality dividend stock or a quality high dividend stock. I guess there is a distinction there. But talked about how I feel it's important what type of industry or sector in this case, which is broader than an industry, but nevertheless, that it's the business model that a company is going to have in a particular sector is going to make a difference on how consistently it's going to be able to pay a high dividend. Okay, the example being, a business that's in a consumable or subscription-based business model, is going to have people coming back and purchasing from them again and again and again. Utilities, a good one. People, we don't just sign up for utilities one month, cut them the next month, typically, maybe in the case of cable, but certainly not in the case of like electricity or gas or anything. So anyhow, I grouped all of these stocks, the 40 of them that were on there when I looked last week, and put them into the individual sectors. You can see those sectors are communication services, consumer cyclical, energy, financial services, industrials, real estate, not surprisingly, and a couple in utilities, with real estate comprising the bulk of them, and financial services and energy with a fair share. I think financial services, I forget, there's an acronym for the type of company that's that I think would be appropriate for the companies that are these monthly dividend payers, in that they're really investment companies, holding companies, I guess you might call them, but their main business is investing, in smaller, typically private companies, I think, and then they lend them money and own equity and collect dividends from there, and then turn around and pay to their investors. That's my understanding. But anyhow, I had one on there that I didn't know where it belonged. It didn't looked it up. I couldn't find a sector for it. So it does say real estate investment trust. So there's probably a pretty good clue to where it belongs. But according to Yahoo Finance, it didn't technically have one. You'll notice with these companies that a lot of them have a .to suffix, and 8 of them actually of the 40, so 20% of them, and that means that they're traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Okay, one is actually traded on the pink sheets, so might be some concerns in terms of liquidity there, but that's the HTT Hugoton Royalty Trust. And if you spend any time looking at monthly dividends or payers, in particular, or just dividend stocks in general, you'll recognize, Realty Income Corporation. That's kind of the poster boy for monthly dividend paying stocks. So I also linked to the post that I had previously put up regarding characteristics of quality high dividend stocks, and touched on in that post how consistent earnings, the right business model, and solid financials are important things to consider when investing for dividends. And since monthly dividend paying stocks pay out 3 times as much as quarterly dividend paying stocks, I would say that consistency in earnings, a good business model, and solid financials are 3 times as important, not more. So lastly, we'll look at mutual funds that pay monthly dividends. And I assumed that I would be able to do like I did with ETFs and stocks and go find a definitive list somewhere, but I could not find one that existed. So I thought that was an opportunity to begin to put one together. Now, there's obviously, I think I looked on one screen, there are over 26,000 mutual funds in existence. So I came up with the first 50 I could find in terms of monthly dividend payers. I had to be mindful of the amount of time I spent doing this, but it at least kicks the list off, and I will add to this as others come to light, particularly if you have any ideas or of anything that's missing from this list. Go ahead and go to the post, which I'll link to in the description, and leave it in the comments, please, and I will review it and add it. So a lot of the mutual funds, of course, just like the ETFs, are invested in fixed income securities like bonds, but there are also a decent amount that are equity based too, and you can research those. I don't have links in there because I didn't want them to be too crowded together, but you can go to Morningstar, Yahoo Finance, wherever it is you like to do fund research, and type in them, symbol of course, and do your research there. So, I didn't want to post any other information in terms of NAV yield assets because it's just not, it wouldn't be timely. I'm not set up to have that sort of thing automatically update, so it's just best to, start with the ideas here and then take them and research them somewhere else. That's not really what kind of site Invest the Money is. So that covers the three main monthly dividend paying investments, ETF, stocks, and mutual funds. There were a couple others that I thought of that might kind of loosely fit that description. One being pretty obvious, something that a lot of ETFs and mutual funds and stocks are invested in, and that's real estate. But the site, for the time being anyways, is more focused on the contemporary type of investments like you would buy through a brokerage than investments in that sense. Obviously, the term investment can transcend just what you could buy through a brokerage. And the real estate is a completely viable investment, pays monthly income, and could be very lucrative. So, that I acknowledge that is like I said, a potentially monthly dividend. I use that term loosely, paying investment. It just wasn't really applicable for this post. The other one was selling covered calls, which again I would use dividends in quotes because that's not technically dividends in the sense of money paid out from earnings, but that is a strategy some people use that are invested in equities. I guess you could do naked calls and sell options, but without getting too complicated with it. A lot of times people will buy a stock and sell covered calls and kind of consider that a dividend. So also completely viable strategy, just wasn't appropriate for this post. So if you think of anything that I left off this list of monthly dividend paying investments that belongs on there, again, go to the post down in the description, leave me a comment, let me know. And don't forget that if you know of any mutual funds that pay monthly dividends that aren't on the list, please go to the post and leave me a comment.